NBC 4 and Focus Features present Academy Award-winning screenwriter Dustin Lance Black. A 2017 Capitol Pride kickoff event.
Did you know that he spent some formative years here in Manassas Park? You didn't know? Okay, I know. I was waiting for a gasp. No gasping? You came to Manassas Park with your family when you were in college?
Yeah, right at the beginning of college, and my father's here somewhere.
Here's right over there.
Right over there. Yeah.
Jeff Black, welcome.
Fish.
Oh, yeah.
We got a lot of names in our family. It was a puzzle. We figured it out.
And you like to go by Lance?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to know, what is it like sitting in the Academy Awards and hearing your name called and walking up there and in front of an audience of 40 billion people around the world?
There's that many people now.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, and they're all watching.
It was terrifying the night before.
Why?
Well, because you might lose, and as much as I had gone to a film school where they taught you if you'd won an award, you'd sold out, I kind of wanted it. I went to UCLA's film school, which was all at the time about sort of experimental filmmaking, be on the edges, all this sort of thing. And I found myself in this position where this film that we never imagined would even get made, all of a sudden was getting a lot of critical acclaim. And I remember a moment where Sean Penn, who's like the coolest guy on the planet, really is, looked at me, and I think I had some blank expression, some dinner in the lead up, and he said, "You want it, don't you? You got gold fever." And I had to be like, "Yeah, I do. I want it. I do." And it's a thing, you know, you gotta just admit it. I did. But then at the same time, you're afraid, deathly afraid that you're going to have the opportunity to get up there. And that's very frightening.
I'll bet.
So I was lucky to have made this with some people, Bruce Cohen and Dan Jinks, who had won for American Beauty as producers, and Sean, who had won an Academy Award already. And they said, it's going to feel like a train hit you, and you're not going to remember anything for a little while. And I didn't. I remember hearing the name, and the next thing I really remember is getting in an elevator, and Jennifer Aniston was handing me a bottle of water and told me to breathe. So.
Why Milk? When did you start? The film aired in 2008, went to the screen in 2008. What was the lead up for that? How long did it take for you to get it there?
I was working on a TV show called Big Love, and which afforded me the opportunity on the weekends to start driving up to San Francisco, start meeting real people who had known Milk, because Warner Brothers for a very long time have been trying to get a Milk movie made and failing and failing and failing, and I'm talking for I think since 1988, 1987, based on a book, a property, and I couldn't use that property. They owned it, and I tried to get the job making their film, and they told me they wanted someone with an Academy Award to write their script. So I was rejected. I left in tears from that meeting, because I had worked at that point for a year trying to build an outline that I thought they would like. I'd met all the real people. I tried to make myself valuable in that way, and they weren't buying it. And I was very upset for about an hour before I got angry, pulled out my Capital One visa, and I just started making the movie. And it was thanks to Focus Features, who had had great success with Brokeback Mountain and understood how to market an LGBT film in wide fashion, so you can get more than just gay people watching it, who stepped up once we had a script and a director and said, you know what, we have faith in this. And it was truly one of, and I'm not just saying that because they sponsored the screening. Part of the reason I'm here and flew across from London on short notice was because it's Focus. And Focus has been lifting up the voices of individuals, unique individuals, filmmakers, for 15 years now. And it's those individual voices of diversity whose stories are told with specificity that get us all to feel like we understand their experience, even though they're so different, that is what is going to, I hope, help create more understanding, help break down walls in a world that's talking too much about building them. So I want a huge thanks to Focus for stepping up.
out, and then I just saw it, I think it was on HBO or someplace the other night. I was flipping through, or a couple of months ago, and I saw the ending of it. It was like the last 30 minutes of it. There's something timeless about it, as if you haven't seen it and you're about to see it, if you've seen it before and you just want to see it again because it's just so great. It is timeless. Earlier today when I was talking to you about this, you said that maybe now more than ever because of the current political climate. Talk about that. And that's what brought you here as well.
That's true. I mean, I did ask, Jerry from Focus, who's here, came to London, where I live, and started telling me that they wanted to do this thing. And he'd asked if I would come to a screening of Milk in DC, and I did question him. I was like, are we getting nostalgic? Like, why are we doing that? And
yeah, we are.
But you know, the truth of it is, this film is about a group of people who are fighting for equality and are starting to make great gains. And you watch that in the structure of this film. They're making gains. And then what happened? Then a backlash happens. In this case, it's Proposition 6 and someone named Anita Bryant and John Briggs. In the case right now, it's a certain administration right here in Washington, D.C., and certain state governments that are rolling back protections. We are in the middle of a backlash. And this film shares Harvey Milk's recipe for beating a backlash. And I want you to really pay attention to that, because you know, we all talk about who we are as individuals and who we are as minorities, and it is true. Every single person in here is a minority in one way or another. Just depends on how you slice that pie. Everyone on the planet is now. We know that thanks to the internet. We're all different from one another. The way we make progress is together. It's not by going to our separate corners and who cries the loudest. It's not by just working for ourselves and our own needs. As minorities, that is a recipe for disaster. If we are divided in that way, just ask Nero from Italy, divided, you are conquered. Well, divided, I was walking up the U.S. Supreme Court steps with a marriage equality case, and I got scared. I knew we were going to win that case, but I was worried we might lose the war because we were divided. And we weren't divided because we didn't like each other. We were divided because we were drunk on our own successes. We had become myopic, self-interested. And I say this to my LGBTQ family, stop paying attention only to our own needs. It is a recipe for disaster. We have to show up for our brothers and sisters in other social justice movements. And I'm glad we're screening this film as a kickoff to Pride here. When we need to resist, we need to stand up, we need to fight back. But how do you do it? You do it by building coalitions. And when you watch how Milk did it, how he finally won, even at the ballot box, he didn't do it by just saying, hey, gay people, come vote for me, right? He put together a coalition of minorities, of seniors, of racial minorities in San Francisco who weren't getting a fair shake at the ballot box, and by union workers who couldn't afford to put their talented kids through school. And he said, I'll fight for you and I'll work for you, and LGBT people will work for you as hard as we do for ourselves. And we'll show up for each other. And he started winning, and they beat a backlash. So I'm hoping this inspires some folks in here to get out there and not just show up to Pride, have fun at Pride, get loud at Pride, but then take that energy and the friends you go to Pride with and maybe think about going to a Black Lives Matter event or a Women's March.
But how do you reach the people who don't understand? How do you reach the people that I think is really easy for us to demonize them? The people who may not have grown up with the tools to understand larger concepts, sophisticated ideas. Maybe they've never known a gay person. Maybe they've been in a household that did not allow them that kind of critical thinking. How do you change their minds? How do you start a dialogue with them when they're scared because they don't understand it, and the world as they know it, as small as their world is, it is still the only world they know. And because of the internet, and because of where we are today, Milk, I'd be curious to see what Milk would do with this current social media, storm, with the message. How do we stop judging them and try to understand their fear?
Well, first off, I'm incredibly grateful that I was born into a very conservative, military, Mormon family from the South. I'm very aware that most of my family, my extended family, voted for Donald Trump. They are red through and through. And I love them. They are my family. I would defend them tooth and bone and to the grave. It also means I don't see it as us and them. It also means I've learned a lesson in having to come out to them myself and having to get them to come to my wedding. I had some Southern folks at my gay wedding in London who don't have any money, and they spent their last dime to fly out to a gay wedding. Yeah, from Texarkana, Texas, to the UK. Showed up with gifts from Walmart. It was fucking awesome. What I say to, part of this we did when we were fighting a marriage case. And part of it is what we do with films like this. It is, when we had a marriage case, did we just make the progressive case for marriage equality? No, we hired Ted Olson to make the conservative case for marriage equality. And what did we do in that case? I tell my progressive friends, and bless them, they're probably right about almost all these things they say, but they're quoting science, they're quoting statistics, they're talking about the Constitution, they're talking about policy and law. And I'm like, it doesn't matter how damn right you are, that's not going to change a mind. Because you want to change a mind, you've got to start here. You got to start with the heart. And that's a personal story. And so I encourage my friends who are trying to reach out, don't reach out and try to be right. Reach out with curiosity. You got to listen. You got to understand who they are. And then start to tell a personal story. If you're doing, this is a personal story in the end. And I hope people feel personally about it. Same with Brokeback Mountain. I mean, these are movies that crossed well beyond just the folks, LGBT folks. Thankfully, made enough money that they'll keep making gay films. But personally, every single one of you in here is armed with a personal story. So if you feel like you want to change your mind, don't come at people with policy and politics and the Constitution, statistics and science. It's not going to work. Tell them your personal story and why this issue is personal to you. And I think that crosses the red-blue divide.
And what about listening to them, listening to their fear, what they come back with?
I always say, in a conversation between people who see things differently, you have to come at it with curiosity. Ask questions. It's what you do for a living. And you see how when you ask questions, instead of coming at people with ideas, they open up. You can start a dialogue. And it's also when kids often write me and say, hey, I'm going to come out to my parents. I have two pieces of advice. One, don't do it at Christmas. That's too dramatic. But number two is you gotta make sure you do all the work you can to leave that channel of communication open, right? Ask questions, be curious about their fears, and you might start to get somewhere. But it is hard, isn't it?
What are you working on right now? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I'm writing a book about I lost my mom 2 years ago. And I'm writing a book about how a conservative, military Mormon mom who walked around on braces and crutches because she was paralyzed had her best friend and her closest son, I think, was this progressive out on the coasts. And how, despite our political leanings, which for a long time couldn't have been more different, we were thick as thieves. And it's just shining light on 12 moments that say, hey, here's where bridges are between our divide in America right now.
And your mother had polio.
Yeah,
so
she
that's
had polio.
That's what handicapped her. But all of us have mothers. How did you do that? How did you create this bond across these very different ideologies?
Well, I tell a story. When I first came out, it didn't go great. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but she wouldn't even tell Jeff, my father over here. He had to find out on his own years later. And it was a bit of a struggle, but what worked for us was she came out to California for my graduation from UCLA. And I had not told my friends that my mom didn't accept me as a gay person yet. And I also didn't tell my mom that so many of my friends were gay and lesbian. And so we had this big dinner thing at our apartment, and I just realized that because I had said nothing, my friends assumed she accepted me, And this was like before Will and Grace, and this was before Ellen, so they were like, wow, she's like a saint, so I can tell her anything, and they started to, and I watched it throughout the night. They start to tell her their stories, and my mom was a good Southern mom, so she was just nodding them to death, like, And I just remember, when everyone left, she sat down with me and had a conversation. She said, I met your friends. I said, yeah. And I just remember her with tears in her eyes, and she just held me so tight. It was the first time I'll cry. It was the first time I ever knew that she loved me for everything about who I am, for all of me. And that happened because she heard personal stories. Nobody came at her with politics because they already thought she was there. So they told her about being rejected by their parents, or about the experience they had with their families, or the issues they were experiencing with being LGBT at the time. And those stories, in one night, in just a few hours, broke down a lifetime of myths and lies and distortions she'd learned from a church and from a government, and they were gone. It's the power of story. It's what we do on the screen at our best, is tell personal story. By the way, it's also what we did in the courtroom with the marriage cases. We told personal stories to the nation. It's why you didn't just see 5 justices agree, you also saw a nation move, because we moved their hearts, because we introduced them not to our lawyers, but to our plaintiffs and to their children. And it's those stories that I think dispel the fears.
Are you religious? Do you still, did you leave the Church of Latter-day Saints?
I am a terrible Mormon. Yeah, I mean,
Not wearing the underwear,
the
I
gay
take it?
sex thing, the addiction to Starbucks, like, it's all bad. So no, I do still work with the Mormon Church though. So you gotta leave those avenues of communication open. I know it's hard, but it is also, it's in this town, maybe you guys do it better, I don't know, or maybe it's way worse, but you got to leave those channels open. And the way I did it with the Mormon Church is I made a documentary called 8, the Mormon Proposition. I worked on that, which held them accountable for funding Proposition 8. They didn't like it, so they called me because they knew they could. And they said, Brother Black, we saw your film. Oh, shit. Shoot, or whatever. And then, then they invited me to come down to the Mormon Tabernacle Christmas Spectacular, which is like their Mormon Oscars. And I said, well, because they wanted to talk to me, reach out, like maybe we can heal this. He'll stop making documentaries that say mean things. And I said, I have some friends I need to bring. And they said, okay, he's got an entourage. And I brought some gay and lesbian couples and their kids. And again, it's this. I mean, this sounds like a broken record, but it's a good one. It works. I just remember afterwards, he saw a lesbian couple who were struggling to keep their kid quiet and crying, and that moved him. And I just remember him, Jeff, who was the head of PR at the Mormon Church, grabbed my hand on our walk out. He said, Brother Black, do you want kids one day? And I said, yeah. And he started to cry. He said, we thought this was about deinstitutionalization, about breaking down the family. I said, no, this is about us having access to protections because we also want a family. And it was like, holy crap, that was the miscommunication the whole time. That's what it was. And we were able to start to fix it. And they're not quite there yet, but if you are a student of the Mormon Church, they say the word gay now. They say it's not a disease and you shouldn't be put through therapy now. They still say you shouldn't act on it, which doesn't make any sense. We'll get to that.
Baby steps.
But baby steps. But we are getting them to help fund an LGBTQ homeless youth shelter run by the Pride Center.
Wow,
because they have a homeless youth problem for LGBTQ youth because of the generations now of homophobia in their church. And so by leaving the channels of communication open, by being willing to go there and meet with them, you can start to make progress.
Brother Black, you are a great missionary. Isn't he? We're going to allow you to see one of his first and great works now, Milk. Thank you so much, Lance.
Thank you
This
very
has
much.
been wonderful. Thanks for coming.